All right. Good evening, everyone. I see some of you have already started asking how everyone's doing. Jackson, how are you doing then? Ah, I hope it's just allergies or a cold and nothing more than that. I've been having allergy symptoms today and yesterday as well. Watery eyes. Yeah, that sounds like my allergy life. I hope that's all it is for you, because that can be annoying, but it can be dealt with. How's everyone else doing? I see a couple in the comments have already mentioned that they're doing okay. it's nice to see that we ended up getting some sunshine, some warmer weather today. Yesterday was so nice. I don't know if any of you got to go outside and enjoy it, but it was lovely yesterday. Oh, pink eye, no fun. I hope that it stays just with your son and doesn't spread around to anyone else. Ay. And that it clears up quickly, because that can be pretty painful. Not to mention just annoying because it's so contagious, but yeah. Right. Well, I'm not, let's see. The day washing all the bedding, yeah. Oh, the joys. Let's see. I'm not seeing any other comments. I'm also not hearing anyone else coming into class. So I guess we can go ahead and kind of get started here. Do you have any questions or concerns about anything? I've already heard about one annotated bibliography mishap, which was not that person's fault, but was definitely technology's fault. Anybody else having any trouble, had any trouble, have any stories you want to share? Yeah, your horrible Microsoft. Yes. Oh, Beth. Okay. Nothing? You guys have nothing going on? You're all good? At least as far as this class is going? Oh, Xfinity has been working on our tower, so my Wi-Fi has been rough. Yeah, my Wi-Fi has been rough too, and it's not an Xfinity thing. So I can only imagine if they've been working on the towers. I've also heard from other people in different places around the Grand Rapids area where they've been working on the Xfinity stuff that have had lots of trouble. So at least we know why we've lost you if you get kicked out or something. And speaking of getting kicked out, yesterday in a 30-minute class, I was booted out of Zoom 4 times. And so was my student. So it wasn't just like my internet or her internet, but it was, I think, a Zoom issue. I don't know if any of you have had other Zoom classes or meetings recently. And I know that last week there were a lot of problems with Zoom as well, not just this class, but like all throughout the week. And I had to switch over to Skype with several of my students, which some of their parents are okay with, because I work with little kids, by the way. My oldest are 15 right now. And, so some of their parents are okay with that, but Skype doesn't have the same security that, Zoom can have. So, let's see, what do we have in here? Ordered a new router. Yeah, I think that's what I'm going to have to do too, Shelby, is order a new router. Because I know that's one of the problems. And then, yeah, it was a little frustrating, but we just roll with it, right, guys? That's really all we can do when we're in the midst of things, is just roll with it, do the best we can. Yeah. All right. So tonight we're going to be talking about writing the formal report. I hope that by now you've all had a chance to look at the material in the handbook on formal reports, because that's what we're really focusing on now, and that's what you need. The majority of what's in the slides is a sort of pared down version of what's in the handbook, plus a couple of other sources that I have and use sometimes. So yeah, let's go ahead and let me get the slides ready. I'm gonna switch off my video camera and share screen. All right. So in our work tonight, which by the way, this could end up being a pretty short class. I'm kind of hoping that it will be to offset the amount of work that goes into writing this report. And so what I've kind of thought about is that if we do go through this material as quickly as I anticipate, then I'll just leave the meeting open for anyone who wants to ask questions. But I'll encourage you all to spend what you would normally spend in class that's left over working on your outline at least, and then you can, I'll be here so that you can ask questions. You can share what you've got, you know, your progress so far, and make sure that you're on the right track for getting that report done this week. So the first thing we're going to talk about is the parts of a technical report. What does it contain? And we're going to start with this short video from the University of Melbourne in Australia. So we get a nice, lovely Australian accent to listen to. It is a good overview of reports. It is designed for engineering students or people working as engineers already, but none of it is specific to engineering, if that makes sense. It's more, it's broader than that, and it applies to everything we're doing. So those of you who might be in other fields are not going to be sitting here thinking, well, how do I make this work for me? It's a very generalized understanding of technical reports. And we're gonna try to watch it on YouTube. Okay, I just wanted to make sure it wasn't also playing on the slides and getting that messed up for us. So let's go ahead and watch.
Hi, this is Ariana from Academic Skills. This video looks at how to structure and write a professional engineering technical report, taking into account your reader and purpose. Technical reports are professional documents that are vital for engineers. They are designed to record and communicate your aim, findings, and recommendations, often for a varied audience. The concepts you're trying to convey are often complex, yet your explanations need to be clear, accurate, and easy to understand. You might be writing for a fellow engineer or a non-expert, someone from a different discipline to you, or a government department representative with no engineering background. So clarity is key. Your reader is busy and probably won't read your technical report from beginning to end. Instead, they're likely to scan for the information they need and read only that section, or they may go straight to your recommendations and go back to read your analysis later. This means that you need to write with your reader in mind and place the key information where your reader expects it to be. Technical reports are often used for making decisions. So you need to present what you did, what you found, what this means, and what you're recommending as a result. When you're writing a technical report, you as the writer have an aim, something you need your reader to know, do, or understand. You need to communicate this to your reader clearly so they can use the information to better understand the situation, make a decision, and if necessary, take action. The content, structure, and style of your report will depend on who your audience is and what they need to know. Before you write, ask yourself, what and how much content should I include and in what form? This includes how much background knowledge can I assume? Would a table, graph, or chart help to communicate the information more clearly than plain text? What's the most logical way to organize the body of the report What will my readers expect to see and in what order? Will my audience understand highly technical language, or do I need to write for a non-expert? Let's take a look at the usual structure of a technical report. First, you usually need to include a title page with a meaningful title, a summary or abstract, and a table of contents. The executive summary or abstract is a standalone section that goes before the body of the report and provides a complete and concise summary of the key information your reader needs without them having to read your full report. What you include in the body of your report will depend on your audience and aim. Reports have an introduction. This is where you include the background information and outline the aim and structure of your report. Organise the body of your report into clear sections which present and discuss your findings with descriptive headings to help your reader jump to the section most relevant to them. In some reports, recommendations and conclusions are separated, and in others, you might find them together or just one or the other. It's up to you to choose the most logical way to present the information for your reader and then indicate this clearly to your reader using specific headings. Your conclusion briefly summarizes your main findings, and your recommendations suggest specific actions arising from the conclusions. If the focus of your report was to make recommendations, you might find this becomes a section in the body before the conclusion. It's always best to check the requirements of your brief so you know where to place your focus. If you include other sources in your technical report, be sure to include your reference list at the end of your document. You may also choose to save detailed or extensive data for your appendices for your reader to refer to if needed. Technical reports will be one of the most common documents you write as an engineer. Your role as the expert is to clearly communicate your findings, to design your report so your reader can easily find and understand the information that's important to them. If this is your first time writing an engineering technical report, have a look at example technical reports from your discipline. A quick online search will yield a range of samples for you to review in order to bring the ideas we've shared with you in this video to life. For more tips and resources, search for Academic Skills Uni Melbourne.
All right, does anyone have any questions about that video? Okay. So to recap, the work of the technical report is to make the concepts clear, keep the busy reader in mind, help the reader understand your findings, and you do all of this by tailoring the whole report, the language and everything to your reader, understanding that you are most likely going to be sending your report to someone who is not an expert in that field. So you want to make everything understandable to someone who does not know all of the technical terms and ins and outs of the discipline. There are 3 main sections, and of course, those are broken down into further sections, further parts. We have the front matter, which explains the purpose, describes the scope and type of information in the report, and guides the reader through the report using things like the table of contents. The body is the meat of the report. It provides the context. It describes the methods and procedures, what you did, how you got your information. It basically describes your research. It conveys any results. So if there were surveys or experiments or anything, it gives the results of those, and it makes recommendations based on the research and the results. And then finally, you have the back matter, which is the supplementary material that adds to the, I guess, the usability of the report and the gives the audience some more to go after, more information that they can find. So we'll be looking at each of those sections. But first, we're going to talk about them out of that order. We're going to talk about the body first, then the back matter, and then finally the front matter. And that reason is the front matter really cannot be written, cannot be designed and put together until after the body is complete. And once your body is complete, the back matter is easy to just kind of tag on. Most of it wouldn't be stuff that you have to do a lot of creation. And then the table of contents obviously depends on the whole rest of the report being complete, including the back matter. So we're going to talk about it in that order. So the body, the main event. In the body, you will have many different sections. You may not have all of these sections. You will have an executive summary, which provides a more complex overview than the abstract, but still isn't super long. And we have a slide about that coming up. So I'll give you more information in a moment about the executive summary. You will give an introduction that kind of gives the readers then the information necessary for them to understand the report. So it kind of puts things into context. You will have the text itself, which presents the details of the research that you've done and is enhanced by tables, graphs, visuals, headings, references. Excuse me. You may have conclusions in which you interpret the findings. If you've done experiments or you've given some more extensive surveys or questionnaires and that kind of stuff, then you would offer some interpretations to the findings. You will, in yours, have recommendations, and you will be stating what course of action you think should be taken. So remember, your project is explaining a problem that you know of in the field of work, and you're doing the research to understand the scope of that problem, the ways that that problem has been handled so far, if at all, and kind of looking at the deeper details, the context, the patterns in the problem, so that you can recommend a potential solution. And that's where your recommendations are going to come in. And then you may have some explanatory notes. Often we think of those as footnotes or endnotes, things that it's information that amplifies points that have already been made. But if you include it in the text itself, then it could interrupt the flow of the report, disrupt the focus, and just take the reader away from what's really important in the report. So you would put those as footnotes or endnotes. And then you will have references, which you pretty much already have if you completed your annotated bibliography. But the difference here is that the references are like we do for any research paper, where this is only the material that you summarize, paraphrase, or quote directly in the report itself. So for many of you, your references list is going to be a bit shorter than your annotated bibliography is, because you may have found in doing your research that there are some sources that maybe you won't use. Or maybe at this point, doing your research, having your annotated bib, you think, oh yeah, I'm going to use all of these sources. But when you start writing, you realize, no, I'm not really going to quote or summarize or paraphrase from all of them. So your reference list might be shorter, but you're still using APA style citations, just like a reference list for an APA research paper. So it's going to be that same style as the annotated bibliography, just without the annotations. Any questions so far about the body? We are going to look at the executive summary on the next slide, but while we have this slide up, are there any questions about any of these? Okay. I'll keep an eye on the chat just in case something pops up, because I know it takes a while to type them sometimes. All right, so the executive summary is different from an abstract. Oh, wait, there is a question, so let me reply to that one so I don't forget. If we find more references while working on the report, can we add it to the bibliography and resubmit? If you find more references while you're working on the report, I don't expect you to add those to the bibliography. Just if you are using them in the report, quoting, paraphrasing, summarizing, or say you use a chart from the report or something like that, then just add it to your references page. Okay. Right. So the executive summary consolidates the principal points of a formal report. It must accurately and concisely represent the original document. It should restate the document's purpose, scope, methods, findings, conclusions, and recommendations, all of those that are actually on the document. And the executive summary should be approximately 10% of the length of the report and generally follow the same sequence. So if your report were 10 pages, your executive summary should be about 1 page. An abstract is different in that it is 200, typically 200 to 250 words. Some abstracts are shorter than that. Very few are allowed to be longer than that. So your abstract is a shorter piece generally, and it is only really talking about it's really what you could think of as like the snapshot version of the paper. So it does tell you the paper's topic and its purpose. It might mention a little bit about the research that was done, any methodology in that, but it doesn't go into much detail about that. And it does mention the conclusions, whatever the conclusions were, recommendations, whichever you have, or sometimes have both. But it doesn't go into much detail on any of that. It's very straight and to the point. An executive summary is going to maybe have a little more detail, and it's going to give the person who reads it should be able to feel like they have read the report. Whereas an abstract is going to give you an idea of whether you want to read the report, if you think it's going to have something for you as a researcher, as someone who's trying to gather information. The executive summary is for those who are not going to read the entire report, but they need to know everything that's in the report. So giving them that summary makes them feel like they've read the whole report. Right, so that was a pretty quick look at the body and what's included in the body. Now, I know that at least some of you have looked at the pages in the handbook on reports, on formal reports. They start on page 183. If you haven't looked at it yet, you can still look right now if you have yours with you. Looking at particularly pages 192 through 205. I think it's 205. Yeah. What do you see are the differences between this kind of report, the formal report writing, and a research essay. Because so far, you've done the same kind of research and the annotated bibliography that would be pretty standard for an English composition research essay project, or even research essays in other disciplines might require some of those same things of same processes of research, going through a proposal process, going through collecting your research into an annotated bibliography. So now what we produce is different. So what are the differences between an essay and a report?
Well, it looks like the executive summary, that you do an analysis, recommendations, just kind of like doing more research, and I guess, I don't know, rather than just kind of spewing back, like doing your own research and giving formal answers to it that matter to your company.
Okay. Yeah, so I think if I understand what you're saying, you're kind of, I would take away that you are trying to say that it might be a little more targeted to that specific company.
Yes, thank you for
Okay.
summarizing those words.
I was like, there's silence. Did I totally get that wrong?
No, you're right.
Okay, good, because that is correct. That yes, when we look at the executive summary here, without even having to read the entire report, we can see that this is very much targeted toward the company, the organization that is going to use the information from this report. So that is something that is very different than our typical research essays would be. What are some other features that are different than a typical research essay?
They use bullet points.
Yes. So for those of you who are like, oh my gosh, I didn't know I was going to have to write an essay. You don't write an essay in this class. You can write bullet points where it's appropriate. And in fact, if you scan through those pages, you can see that there are several places where bullet points take up a good portion of the page. So bullet points are very much a part of this genre of writing. Thank you. What else do we have that is maybe a little bit different? Is there anything that you can see that's different than typical research essays? Okay. Let's see. Reports are about clarity and making the reader understand the problem as well as the solution. A research essay tends to be longer and more abstract. Yeah, I think that you're right about that. The research essay is going to be longer and more abstract in many cases than a report, and it's not necessarily written for an audience that needs the I guess the translation into non-field specific speech. So avoiding jargon isn't necessarily required in a research essay, depending on the particulars of that research and the audience. But for reports, we're generally assuming that our audience needs to have a translation of technical terms and jargon. So more supporting materials, charts, case studies, etc. Yeah, we do see in research essays usage of charts and things, but those are often, in my opinion, not very usable for the everyday average reader of the paper, because they're very much using research specific conventions in reporting data, statistics and stuff that you learn in research statistics classes and whatnot. And in these reports, we see like pie charts, and even the most complicated pie chart we can figure out after looking at it for a short time, but these reports are pretty or these charts, I'm sorry, the pie charts are pretty straightforward. They're easy to pull out the information that you need from them. And so others, you might see some graphs, or you might see some other images that would help in other reports, but they're not going to be the kind of the obscure ones that we see in research essays. Okay, so a question: as long as we properly source case studies from our reference materials, do we need to recreate some? No, you don't have to recreate any. You can source them, which in many cases would be better. Now, if there were an opportunity for you to do a survey or questionnaire or something, that's recommended, but I'm not requiring it simply because it's not always appropriate for everyone. Okay. So what do we see that is similar then to research essays? Since that, for most of us, is the research writing subgenre that we're most familiar with, is the essay form. What do we see here that's similar to research essays that we can kind of use as our entry point, our familiarity point with this kind of writing? Content title page, yes. Reference pages, yes. Abstract, yeah. If we even look, looking at the formatting, if you have written, and I know some of you said you have, and I know that some of you have not done APA research before. APA research writing, you are encouraged to make use of headings. In fact, APA's style guide has a whole like plan for headings, like how you use, what you use different kinds of headings for, how they're formatted, whether they're bolded or italicized and indented and centered and all of that stuff. It's like headings is one thing that we see used in the report, although not to the degree of difficulty with the different formatting options as the research essay, but we do use headings a lot. Are there any other things that you can see that are similarities that haven't been mentioned? Page numbers, yes. Page numbers will be very important. Okay. All right. Let's see here. Okay. If anyone has any questions or anything else you want to add to the chat, I am keeping an eye on it, but let's go ahead and talk about back matter, since we've already had a little bit of it well, we haven't really had the back matter, but anyway, so we've got the back matter is the supplementary material. And you see often some of this in research essays as well, particularly the APA ones, but even sometimes MLA or Chicago style, depending on the subject matter and what you have found in your research. The bibliography. So your annotated bibliography will be attached to the final report. So you will add that on to the last pages of your report. You may choose to have an appendix or 2 or 3 if you have some supplemental material that doesn't fit in the report itself, isn't really appropriate for a note, but you maybe want to have, you know, say an extra chart or something, a story, an anecdote or something that would supplement what you have in the report. This isn't required, but some people may choose to have that if there's something they're like, I really want to share this, but it doesn't fit anywhere else. Then putting it in the appendix might be a good idea. Some people may choose to have a glossary where they might define some of those technical terms, the jargon, the technical language, industry specific language that maybe has to be used in the report because there's just no other way to say it. So that might be a place where you can get your words defined, is just have a glossary that the reader can refer to. And then an index, if your report were super duper duper long, which I don't think any of you are going to have a report long enough to need an index, but if it were, you know, a few dozen pages long, you might need an index so that the readers could look up certain areas, certain topics, and see where they're mentioned in different places. So let's see, I have something in the chat here. If we do an in-person interview or email, should we add them there? You could add those things into the appendix if you think that like an interview transcript or an email chain would be useful for the reader. That would be fine to add those there. Otherwise, if you weren't going to add those there, but you were referring to them in the report, you would still create a citation entry for each one. Right, and so that's the back matter, which apart from the annotated bibliography, you may not have anything else to add to the back matter. Any other questions about that part? Okay. So we come to the front matter. The front matter really can't be fully created until after the rest of the report is complete. And so that's why we've saved it for the last part of the report, discussion. The front matter will have a title page. So you do have to create a title page. We are going to look at what that consists of in a moment. You may choose to have an abstract. I think it's a good idea to have an abstract, but I do know that I'm asking you for a lot of writing this week. So if there were something to be left off, you could leave off the abstract. You must have a table of contents. You know, we've all seen how a table of contents looks in different sources, different publications and books and whatnot. So I don't think I have to give you too much instruction on that. Again, you don't want to create your table of contents until after you have all your other pages done. There is, for those of you who know how to do it, and I think I have a tutorial, and if I do, I can share that with you on Blackboard. But there is a way in both Word and Google Docs to have it create a table of contents for you. I will look for that tutorial and make sure that it is current, that it's not out of date. But it's also, not too difficult to just create the table of contents from scratch. So, don't get hung up if you don't know how to do it with Word or Docs, like have it do it for you. It might be more trouble than it's worth for some. Right. You might have in the beginning of your report a list of figures, a list of tables. We see that a lot, especially in textbooks, where there's a list of figures, a list of tables, a list of images, artworks, or whatever. You may choose to have that. You don't have to. It could be useful, especially if you have several figures or tables or graphs or whatever, but you don't have to have one. The foreword and the preface are both just they're particular kinds of introductory material that isn't really about the content so much as maybe a little bit more about the writer's thinking. That's not something I'm going to ask you to do. If you choose to do that, that's fine, but I don't see that it is a necessity. And I don't think there's even an example in this book, so I wouldn't worry about it. And then if you are using certain abbreviations or symbols regularly, you might want to include that list just so that your readers are aware of what those are. I was wondering, Emily, what I was supposed to interpret from that. Typo, I understand that. Cat. That's it. It's always the cat. It's always the cat. Okay. So those are the main parts that you could have in front matter. So the title page. This is an important part of the report. It's the first thing that anyone looking at your report is going to see. Although you see that in the example, there is a report memo. We're not doing that. I already had you do a memo and that was your proposal. So we're not going to do that report memo. We're starting with the title page. And there's an example of a title page on page 190. So you can see that there's the full title. There is the author's information. There is the name of, or there's the date, the date of the report. And then there's the name of the company that it's prepared for. The organization, let's see. The organization that the writer works for, I'm assuming, is the CGF logo at the top of that page of that. And so I think that the writer works for the same company that the report is prepared for. That's not always the case, but in this case, I think that is. And so you will also assume the same, that you are working for the organization that you are preparing the report for. For those of you who are using maybe more real world scenarios, like your actual place of work, if you want to use your actual employer information, you may. If you do not want to use that, you can either be creative and make up your own company name and all of that, or you can just stick with GRCC or Ferris or Davenport or whatever institution you call your home institution if you would like to. So you have some options there. It doesn't have to be real life. You can make up stuff for that. So again, you're going to have the full title of the report, your name and your role, the date of the report, which for our cases will be the 31st of March. You will have the name of the organization that you choose, and that can be the same or different than the name of the organization that you are creating it for. Any questions about the title page? Okay. In that case, we'll talk about the abstract for anyone who chooses to do the abstract. I do think it's a good exercise, but I do understand that I'm asking a lot of you this week, so I'm not going to require the abstract. It would be going a little bit above and beyond, doing a little bit extra to do it. So 200 to 250 words is the standard for most abstracts. Again, some can be shorter and none should be longer. Although occasionally you might see one that's longer, that's really an exception to the rule. The abstract summarizes and highlights the major points of the report. It doesn't give you all the details. It doesn't go into a lot of information about the methodology, the research, all of that. It really gives you the highlights, the big points. And it enables the readers to decide whether or not to read the full report. So the executive summary is like the condensed version of the report. It's like the SparkNotes version of the report, where you get like just the summary. But the abstract is more like the book blurb, if that makes sense. So it's just going to give you the highlights, and it retains the tone and essential scope of the original work. So it's not really meant to be an advertisement or anything. It's not meant to, leave you on a cliffhanger. It's meant to tell you the topic of this report is X because of Y. We found this and we recommend this. The end. So it's very much straight to the point. And you can read a little bit more and see an example of an abstract on pages 6 through 8 of the handbook if you are interested in trying your hand at the abstract. Okay. Any questions? All right. I told you this might be a short class tonight. It really was going to depend on how many questions you had, how much you wanted to kind of get in here and discuss anything. Your assignments this week, you have an outline that's due on Thursday. That should be an outline of your entire report from title page to the end of any back matter that you have. You should have it kind of pretty well set how you want things to go, what order you want them to be in, an idea from yourself of how much material you'll have for those parts. This does not mean that you have to have, a super minutely detailed outline, but it can't just say table of contents, introduction, conclusion. Like you have to have some more information there. And so if anyone needs more instruction, more help with outlining that is useful, please let me know, and I will be glad to do some of that with you. I was kind of assuming, whether rightly or wrongly, I don't know, that most of you would have had some good instruction in outlining or practice in outlining from composition classes. But again, you know, not everyone has had the same composition experiences. So if you want to work on some outlining, we can do that. The draft of your report is due Monday night's class. The first part of it will be peer review. You will be paired up with one other person, unless we have an odd number of people in class, and then we might have a group of 3, but we will not have larger groups. If we do, within that group, you would just kind of pair up with one person in the group so that you're only reviewing one other person's work, since they're going to be longer pieces. Because we're also Monday night going to start looking at writing for digital media. You are going to be creating a website of your own, and we'll be talking about the options that you have for that Monday night as well. So this is really, really early. And if this were an in-person class, we would still be in class and you would still be working, and I would be walking around and talking to every person in the class one-on-one about your ideas, about what I saw in your proposals, what I've looked at in your bibliographies, which I have not looked at yet today. But you know, this is not something that is really easy to do in a virtual setting. So you're all adults, you know what you need to do. I recommend staying in the meeting, because this is when you would normally be in class anyway, sitting at wherever you're sitting right now to do your work, working on your outline, spending this time, using this time to your advantage. I can't obviously make you do that. And I know some of you have other concerns, like a child with pink eye, and some other concerns going on. So like I said, you're adults, you know what you need to do. I'm going to leave this meeting open. I'm going to stop recording though, but I'm going to leave this meeting open, and I'm going to be here doing some work at my desk. So if anyone does want to talk to me, want to share any of your work with me, ask me any questions, I'm here for you. We can kind of consider this like informal conference time. He just yelled, I have pink eye from his table. Sorry, poor kid. I really hope he gets over that soon, because I know it's so frustrating and so painful. Okay, so that's all I'm gonna say about everything for now. I'm gonna stop the recording, and I'm going to let you guys just